Hey everybody, Ito here, and welcome to a new episode of Strictly Arcade. Today I'm going to do something I probably should have done in my first episode, and that was do an introduction to Jamma. A couple years ago I kind of already did one in one of my earlier video game knowledge videos, but I think I'm going to go a little bit more in depth this time. Not too technical to scare everybody away, but enough so you get an understanding what Jamma actually is. Jamma is an abbreviation for Japanese Amusement Machinery Manufacturing Association, which kind of means nothing. Basically, it was a group formed by a number of companies like Konami, Namco, Sega to standardize the way arcade games worked. Prior to Jamma, each individual arcade company pretty much had their own proprietary hardware. So you couldn't take a Sega game board and put it in a Nintendo machine and vice versa. There were even variations within the same company, so a game made in 1983 by Sega wouldn't necessarily work in the same configuration as a game made in 1984. So in the mid to late 1980s, what this Jamma Association did was make a universal way for all arcade hardware to be hooked up, and that was with the Jamma harness. This harness would serve as the main connector to the arcade game components. So your arcade controls, the video signal, the power, the sound, and the coin mechanism would all be connected into this one harness. So essentially the only thing arcade manufacturers had to do was technically make a new board in most cases. And it fit pretty much just like a cartridge. Your connector would slide in to the Jamma Edge connector of an arcade PCB, like so. And there you have it. As I said, the Jamma connector really tried to standardize how everything worked. So the first pin would always be ground, as would the second pin, and the third pin would always be +5 voltage, and so forth. Now this is an example of a Jamma board. Jamma boards actually come in a lot of different variations. This is a more simplified one made by Technos, and you can see here it has the standardized Jamma connector, so you can put it in any Jamma machine. And unlike a video game console, a Jamma board would have the video processing, audio processing, game ROM info all on one board. Sometimes they would have board stacks where they had another level interconnected with some kind of pinout, where one board had the game ROMs, another board had the sound processor, another board had the video ROMs, and so forth. So it did get more complicated as Jamma, got older. They did add things like hard drives and CD-ROMs and stuff like that, but they would all come down to this one Jamma connector and connect to a machine. So how is all this relevant? Well, if you want to start collecting arcade games, if you have a Jamma arcade machine or a Super Gun, you want to know if the game is Jamma compatible. So if you have a Nintendo game like Donkey Kong, it's not going to be Jamma compatible. But you're not out of luck, because games like Donkey Kong, like Miss Pac-Man, like Galaga, people have made adapters for those to connect to a Jamma harness. So you have an adapter connecting to the board and the Jamma harness connecting to the adapter. Now I thought, why not get a little bit more technical into this and actually show you the inner workings of our Jamma arcade machine. So let's go check one out. So here I have my Street Fighter II cabinet, which is a Jamma arcade machine, and I'm going to show you how everything is hooked up. The first thing you're going to have is a power cord going into your machine. This power cord has a positive, or hot if you will, neutral, and ground wire. Usually you have this hot wire going to a fuse, like we do here. This fuse basically acts as a surge protector, if you will. If any high voltage comes in here, this fuse will blow instead of your board. So it basically protects your power supply and pretty much anything that gets powered from this unit. Usually from here, we have the power come out into a AC filter, which we have right back there. This AC filter kind of is another safety precaution. It kind of cleans up the signal apparently a little too. I'm not 100% familiar with it, but I do know it's definitely another safety precaution. There are some Jamma machines that don't have that AC filter. It's not recommended. It can be done, but a lot of people recommend it. So your hot, your neutral, and your ground go into here, and then from here, your hot will come out and go to a power switch of some kind. Could be on the top of your cabinet, on the back. Mine is on the top, so I can't really show you. But you do get a return from that power switch, which I believe is this cord here. And this cord will go to your power distribution block. The neutral here is actually coming off of your isolation transformer. So the isolation transformer doesn't, the neutral from your isolation transformer does not go to the power switch, just the hot. So from the power distribution block, the power splits a little. Some power goes into this, which is called an isolation transformer. The isolation transformer is actually what powers the arcade monitor. It kind of downgrades the current a little and makes it usable for the arcade monitor. Later arcade monitors would have this built in, but older ones always had it separate. The power distribution block also has a hot and neutral going out to our switching power supply. This is huge. Switching power supplies are the greatest thing ever, because back in the day, each company had their own power supplies, and they were usually crappy and would blow a lot. Switching power supplies made everything so much cleaner, so much easier to work with, and I highly recommend them, even if you have an old machine, converting to a switching power supply if you can. So our hot and neutral go into here, and from here, this is the power cords. These are the power cords that go to our Jamma harness, and that's what powers the board. Now, the board has power, and it's processing. You know, the sound is coming from the board, etc. And all that function that the board does is separated into individual signals on the Jamma harness. So we have some connections for our joysticks here, some connections for our video out to our monitor, and to our joysticks, our coin door, etc. That is all controlled with the Jamma harness, and that is what Jamma did, was standardize how each and every single one of these pins was used. So just so you get an idea, again, how the wiring goes, right here is this harness, if you will, of wires, this bundle of wires, and this goes up into our monitor, and this is actually the video signal for our monitor. It carries the red, green, blue signal, and our sync cables as well for the monitors. So believe it or not, arcade monitors actually have a really good video connection. They didn't use anything like composite or S-video. They used a form of RGB connection, which is actually great for picture quality. Again, here is the power to our monitor here. And if you follow down these wires, you'll find that they eventually go to our isolation transformer. Now, I'm going to show you a little bit of the arcade controls and how those work. Usually on newer Jamma harnesses, at least, even some on old, you'll get a spool of wires that are labeled with usually a tag or something, and these say control player 1. And each one of these wires has a specific function. The black is usually always the ground, and this black actually gets looped to every single control, at least on player 1. You can do them to player 2 too, but that's getting a little too much in depth. But so yeah, again, this wire could be for up, this wire could be for down, this wire could be for left or right, button 1, button 2, button 3. And that's another thing I want to say. Jamma, by default, only supported 3 buttons. Now, there are some Japanese harnesses that do support 4, but usually 4 was the max. Additional games like Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, etc. actually had an additional harness from the arcade PCB to the controls for those extra buttons. So again, by default, Jamma only supports 3 buttons, but the way the wires are hooked up is all the same, with or without the harness. So again, these wires would go to the controls. over here you can see is the control panel. We have our black coming from the harness, being looped to another black over here, and they're connecting to what's called a micro switch. This is a micro switch right here. And the black, which is the ground, always connects to the top. So you'll see all the blacks get looped eventually to each other. And that's what the ground is. And each individual second little pin here was its button function. So this is button 1. This yellow wire here is button 2, let's say. This little wire here, yellow wire here is down. And how they work is basically the signal comes in, and once a direction is pressed, this little micro switch button right here gets pressed down. And what that does, it completes a connection. So right now we have a signal coming here and a signal coming here, and once this button is pushed, these signals are combined to basically cause a short and let the game board know, hey, a button has been pressed. So that does it for my introduction into Jamma. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I do want to let you know this was supposed to be a general video for Jamma. I didn't go into every single little pin on the Jamma harness because I really want this to serve as a general introduction into the Jamma arcade gaming world, if you will. So, if you're looking for more information, there's tons of information out there. If you want to see what every pin on the Jamma harness does, just Google Jamma pinout and you'll see it. So I really hope you enjoyed it. Please leave comments in the Retroware TV forums in the comments section. Toss me an email if you have any questions. And stay tuned to the next episode as I'll discuss what the heck these things are.